The promise of AI pronunciation tutors is concrete. Instead of spitting out a single goodness of pronunciation score that a learner can't actually act on, large language models can read aligned phonemes, integrate acoustic measurements, and produce human-readable diagnoses. But there's an untested assumption lurking underneath all of this, that these models are actually grounding their feedback in the speech evidence they're given, rather than leaning on stereotypes baked into their pretraining. A new study puts that assumption to the test, and the results reveal a fundamental crack in how audio-capable LLMs process language learning data. To separate what these models say from what they actually know, the researchers built a three-metric evaluation framework. First, rating accuracy tells you whether the model picked the correct label. Second, evidence coherence checks whether the model's explanation logically follows from the evidence it cites, regardless of whether the label is right. And third, grounded correctness is the real diagnostic. It cross-references the rating, the cited evidence, and the explanation against external gold annotations. This lets you spot exactly when a model is reasoning well, but getting it wrong, versus when it's just generating a plausible-sounding guess. They ran this evaluation across three major multimodal models: Gemini 3 Flash, GPT-4o, and Qwen 3.5 Omni-plus. The test set was 1,800 utterances from the L2 Arctic corpus, split evenly across 6 native language backgrounds. They didn't just throw raw audio at the models. They tested 5 distinct evidence conditions: text only, text plus IPA transcripts, text plus raw numeric acoustic features, raw audio only, and audio plus acoustic features. The models were asked to rate 4 dimensions: fluency, pitch variation, stress correctness, and phoneme correctness. The first major finding is stark. Across nearly 35,000 evaluation cells, the models achieved respectable rating accuracy, but that number completely masks a structural failure. When you look at grounded correctness, only 15.8% of the outputs are both internally coherent and factually grounded. Meanwhile, 39.6% of the cases exhibit what the paper calls confabulation. The model generates a perfectly structured, internally consistent explanation that supports a completely wrong rating. It's not random noise or poor phrasing. The model is confident, fluent, and entirely ungrounded. High accuracy on the label does not mean the explanation identifies the right acoustic or phonetic evidence. This becomes even clearer when you look at phoneme feedback. Classical contrastive analysis predicts that learners will make specific substitution errors based on their native language. But the LLMs don't do that. Instead, phoneme feedback collapses onto a fixed, L1 independent stereotype inventory. Across every single language background and every evidence condition, the models overwhelmingly flag the same 4 phones: the voiceless and voiced dental fricatives, /theta/ and /eth/, the open mid-back rounded vowel /open all lengthened /, and the voiced labiodental fricative V. These 4 phones dominate the overclaimed error lists, regardless of what the speaker actually produced. Richer evidence, like IPA or acoustic features, doesn't fix it. The model isn't diagnosing the learner. It's reciting a pre-trained checklist of common L2 English problems. So does giving the model actual acoustic data help? Yes, but only under very specific conditions. The study shows that acoustic evidence improves grounding only when the supplied feature directly probes the target dimension. For pitch variation, providing textualized F0 range values lifts grounded correctness from roughly 0.18 up to over 0.55 across all 3 models. But here's the critical catch: supplying the raw audio waveform alone does not reproduce that gain. The effective intervention is the explicit textual representation of the acoustic measurement, not the audio itself. This highlights a known gap in speech-language models between perceiving non-semantic acoustic cues and actually using them as evidence for diagnostic reasoning. However, this doesn't generalize to stress or phoneme correctness. Stress correctness remains stubbornly ungrounded across all conditions, with grounded correctness never climbing past 0.61. Why? Because diagnosing stress requires target-to-realization alignment. The model has to know which syllable should be stressed, locate where the speaker actually put the stress, and compare the two. Acoustic summaries alone can't encode that comparative alignment. Phoneme correctness faces a similar wall. Even though the model can detect that an error exists, it cannot ground which specific phone was mispronounced, because its citations are decoupled from the speaker's actual production. And when the evidence is ambiguous or missing, the models fall back on demographic priors. In a targeted ablation study, the researchers removed the speaker's L1 and gender from the prompt. With the L1 label visible, models flagged stress errors on almost every utterance, regardless of actual pronunciation. Hide the label, and grounded correctness jumps significantly. The model wasn't listening to the speech. It was seeing L2 learner and assuming errors. Similarly, models routinely labeled male speakers as monotone, even when acoustic data proved otherwise. Hide the gender tag, and the gap reverses. The demographic label was overriding the audio. This research points to 2 critical implications for computer-assisted pronunciation training. First, our evaluation standards are outdated. High F1 scores on rating accuracy are an illusion of competence. Future benchmarks must decouple task accuracy from reasoning validity by reporting multi-tiered grounding metrics like evidence coherence and grounded correctness. Second, the architecture of these systems needs a refactor. Current general-purpose LLMs are severely dissociated between surface-level task performance and factual grounding. They are not reliable as standalone diagnostic engines. A more robust design uses specialized acoustic models for target-to-realization alignment and deploys LLMs strictly as downstream natural language interfaces to verbalize externally computed evidence. The takeaway is clear. Until these models can reliably perform feature readout and comparative alignment without collapsing into parametric priors, we should treat them as powerful verbalizers of structured data, not autonomous speech diagnosticians. The future of AI pronunciation training isn't about asking a general-purpose language model to listen and guess. It's about building pipelines where acoustic models handle the signal-level alignment and LLMs handle the explanation. If you're building or researching AI for language learning, this decoupling between accuracy and grounding is exactly where the field needs to focus next. Let me know in the comments how you're handling evidence grounding in your own pipelines, and subscribe for more deep dives into the latest AI research.